Camp is an aesthetic style and sensibility that regards something as appealing because of its bad taste and ironic value. Camp can also be a social practice and function as a style and performance identity for several types of entertainment, including film, cabaret, pantomime, and drag. Camp needs to be lively, audacious, and dynamic. Camp aesthetics delights in impertinence. Camp opposes satisfaction and seeks to challenge.
We originally created these outfits for a ball that was going to be held in October. Due to COVID, it had to be moved. We proceeded with our outfits anyway. This was to be our first ball. We wanted to make a visual and important statement.
Picking an era was hard. We both love Tudor, but those gowns don't travel well in modern luggage. We thought about doing Baroque, but we couldn't settle on an embroidery look to go with. We finally settled on the Edwardian era because the outfits traveled well, would be great for dancing, and would provide warmth without too many layers.
I fell in love with lingerie dresses from the time, but couldn't find many images of black people in this type of outfit. I found even fewer images of overly queer people in this dress.
I loved the suits from the time period, but I didn't want anything extremely traditional. I wanted something very loud and showy, but not necessarily vaudevillian in nature.
When Dionysus brought up vaudeville, I knew exactly what we had to create: Camp Edwardian outfits. Our personal take on the Gibson Girl and the Gibson Man. The only issue is that neither of us felt like we could see ourselves in the Gibson Girl or Man. We researched and we became more and more discouraged at the photos we found.
We just didn't see ourselves. So I asked Muse an important question. Why do we have to see ourselves in these long gone stylized people? If we really want to do camp, if we really want a vaudeville experience, we should create a feeling from the ground up. We should stylize our own versions of what these ideals were meant to represent.
He brought up good points, which led me to really start conceptualizing our looks. I wanted Dionysus in a southern summer style suit, while I was to be dressed in a lingerie dress with sheer panels and pink undergarments. I wanted pink undergarments to skirt the traditional white undergarments of the time. I really wanted to play up the lingerie aspects of this dress. Instead of having the undergarments blend in, I wanted them to be an important part of the look. Almost like people were getting a peek into something that wasn't meant to be seen, but clearly meant to be seen in nature. I love the idea of using a ton of different flat lace and a variety of shades because I wanted to add more dimension to the overdress. Nearly all of the lace, cotton, and sheer material was sourced from a crafting donation site that's local. The only cotton pieces and lace that were purchased are pleated along the very bottom of the skirt. I wanted these outfits to feel extravagant without costing a ton of money. Every element of this outfit was done with intention. Making the undergarments visible yet hidden played with the European and American Edwardian concept. Queer people had two choices at the time. They could either live quietly, only showing affection around trusted people. It was illegal in many places in America to dress as the, and I'm using quotes here, opposite gender. So those who did break the law often moved from home to avoid being caught. The other option was performance. The stage was a home for queer folks. There were entire shows devoted to making a mockery of gender norms at the time. These shows were wildly popular. As much popularity as they gained, queer people had to end the quote-unquote act once the curtain call was completed. Pink undergarments played to the absurdity of it all. Something that wasn't meant to be seen, yet seen all the time by the public. The choice to use many types of flat lace instead of one or two patterns was meant to represent the complex relationship queer people had with society. The flat lace is patterned out specifically so that the pieces blend in rather than stand out individually. Knowing one's place in society at the time was a matter of life and death for queer people. Being able to pass or come off as being quote unquote real meant that trans people could live in peace.
My fabric was also sourced from the same maker's donation site that we found Muse's. I wanted something that blended in so well that it stood out. The fabric reminded me of Edwardian wallpaper, yet the background was a simple, deep beige. The floral pattern was also muted, though when compared to modern clothing or even Edwardian clothing, it was over the top. Being a man who liked men at the time was, like Muse explained, regulated to the stage but not socially acceptable at the time. There was a careful balancing act of choosing to live authentically and needing to be careful about how safely one could be authentic to themselves. During this era of silent film, minstrel shows were a huge inspiration for the style of comedy that was popular. It mimicked many vaudeville acts where the show style became commonplace. A reoccurring element to these shows and films is to have a moment of accidental queerness happen. Maybe a trip and two men accidentally kiss. These moments were a delicate balance of what was funny at the time and what was acceptable at the time. And because queer people had to blend in with society, I wanted a suit that painfully blended in. The vest represents that even if someone doesn't blend into societal norms, they may have to fake it. And the hat was quite common at the time, but I didn't choose it because of its commonality. I wanted a hat that screamed vaudeville. Typically, this hat is pictured in later vaudeville shows, well after talkies became the norm and the stage experience of vaudeville began to die out. I wanted a hat like this to put on a show of what camp was, what vaudeville looks like to people today.
We wanted to pay tribute to those performers, those people who came before us and fought for their right to exist, those who chose to live fully in their truth, well, as fully as permissible. Because without their work, we wouldn't be free to make this today. We often think of history as being segmented, when in reality, the connection is there if you only look. Queer performers in vaudeville, touring the nation, and playing to sold-out theaters night after night became the, and I'm using the ballroom terminology here, mothers and fathers and parents to the queer children who held riots and protests in the 1940s for their rights.
They became the grandparents of the children who started Stonewall.
I mean, in the case of Stormy de la Barre, she was a grandparent who also played a key role in those riots.
True. The through line of history is there if we only take the time to look.
So, as we present these lively, audacious performance pieces,
Camp outfits.
right, we can only hope that our intentions came across. These outfits were made for our first ball, a coming out of sorts. Until next time.